It's probably one of the oldest and most gut-wrenching questions we've ever asked. Why do good people suffer? I mean, if the universe is just, why do terrible things happen to people who've done nothing wrong? Well, today we're going to dive deep into one of humanity's most profound attempts to wrestle with that very question, the ancient story of Job.
So the story kicks off almost like a fairy tale, right? We're introduced to this guy, Job, and he isn't just a good person. He's literally the definition of a righteous man. And this opening, it really sets this grand, almost epic tone for the absolute ordeal that's about to unfold.
All right, let's start with Act 1. Because, you see, to really feel the gut punch of what happens to Job, we first have to understand just how perfect his world was, and what he was about to lose.
So, who was Job, really? Well, he was a pillar of integrity, someone who truly respected God. He had this big, thriving family, 7 sons and 3 daughters. He was also incredibly rich. I mean, we're talking vast herds of animals and tons of servants. And this wasn't just for show. His faith was the real deal. He started every single day praying and making sacrifices, just in case his kids had messed up. By every single measure, this guy was basically perfect.
But, a perfect life like that, well, it doesn't go unnoticed. It actually attracts some attention up in the heavens. And this is where the story takes a huge turn. It goes from being this simple tale of a good man to a full-blown cosmic drama, all because of a divine challenge.
Okay, so this conversation is absolutely key to the whole story. The Lord basically points to Job and says, look at this guy. There's no one like him. But then this other figure shows up. He's called the accuser. Think of him less as a simple villain and more like a celestial prosecutor. And he asks this really cynical question. Sure, Job fears God, but does he do it for nothing? He's basically saying, is his faith real, or is he just a good guy because you've blessed him so much? And boom, the challenge is thrown down. Take away all his stuff, and I bet he'll curse you to your face. This isn't just about Job anymore. It's a test of what faith even is.
And just like that, the wager is made. The story takes this incredibly sudden, violent turn. We're now in Act 2, and this is where we see the systematic, total destruction of absolutely everything Job loves.
And the assault is just relentless. It's not one tragedy, it's a cascade of them. It all happens in a single day. 4 different messengers show up, and each one has worse news than the person before. First, his wealth is stolen. Then it's destroyed by raiders and some kind of freak fire from the sky. And then, the final, just unthinkable blow. A massive windstorm hits the house where all of his children are, and the whole thing collapses, killing every last one of them. Now, after all that, facing that kind of unimaginable loss, Job's response is just staggering. Don't get me wrong, he grieves. He tears his clothes, he's in agony, but he doesn't curse God. He actually blesses him. So by all accounts, he's passed the first absolutely horrific test.
But the accuser, he's not done. He comes back and says, okay, sure, a guy can handle losing his stuff, even his family, but skin for skin, touch his own body, and then he'll break. And so the test gets escalated. Job is struck with these agonizing, painful sores, a constant physical torment, literally from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet.
And it's this physical suffering that really brings us to the philosophical heart of the whole story. You have to picture him sitting in a pile of ashes, scraping at his own sores. And from that place, he begins this desperate search, not just for relief from the pain, but for answers. He wants to know why. He's searching for justice.
So 3 of his friends show up, supposedly to comfort him. But honestly, their idea of comfort is its own kind of torture. Their argument is pretty simple, and you've probably heard it before. God is just, therefore all suffering must be punishment for sin. Since you, Job, are suffering so much, well, you must have done something really bad. Their advice? Just repent, and God will make it all better. But Job? He's not having it. He insists he's innocent and demands a trial. He wants to plead his case directly to God.
And this really gets to the core of it, doesn't it? As these debates go on and on, you start to realize that Job's real agony, it isn't his friends and their terrible advice, it's the silence. The profound, deafening silence from the one person he actually wants to hear from. It's that feeling of being completely abandoned by God. And then, just when things are at their most intense, the climax hits. God finally speaks. But the answer he gives, it's not the legal argument Job was hoping for. It's something so much bigger.
a revelation that completely reframes the entire story.
Imagine this, a storm, a whirlwind, and out of it, God's voice booms. But it doesn't give Job an answer. Instead, it hits him with this massive, perspective-shattering question. All of a sudden, Job's personal pain is put up against the vast, epic backdrop of all creation. It completely resets the scale of the whole conversation.
So here's the thing. God never actually answers Job's why. He never explains the wager. Instead, he takes Job on this incredible poetic tour of the universe. He starts asking him questions like, "Hey Job, do you have any idea how the world was built? Do you know where I keep the snow? Can you guide the stars?" He points out these huge, wild, untamable creatures like the Leviathan. The message is clear. It's not an explanation. It's a demonstration that the universe runs on a divine wisdom that is so complex, so far beyond what any human could possibly grasp.
And Job's response to all this? It's just total humility. And it's important to get this right. He's not admitting he's guilty of some secret sin. It's more like, you know that feeling when you demand to speak to the manager and instead you get a full tour of the entire mind-blowing factory? That's Job. He suddenly understands his tiny place in this vast, mysterious cosmos. He repents, but not for a sin he committed. He repents for having such a limited viewpoint when faced with something so divine. And right there, with that incredible moment of understanding, the ordeal is finally over. We're moving into the final act now, the resolution. We see Job's life get restored, a powerful symbol of his faithfulness through a trial that is just unimaginable.
And when I say restoration, I mean it is absolute. In this really powerful symbolic move, everything that Job lost, it's all given back to him. Not just replaced, but doubled.
He gets a new family, new sons and daughters. His wealth is now twice what it was before he lost everything. And he lives a long, long life. The story wraps up by telling us that the Lord blessed the end of Job's life even more than the beginning. The whole ordeal has come full circle.
So what's the big takeaway here? Look, if you're reading the story of Job looking for a simple, easy answer for why we suffer, you're going to be frustrated. It just doesn't offer one. What it does give us is a profound shift in perspective. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, faith isn't about getting a neat explanation for every tragedy. Maybe it's about trusting in a wisdom that's way beyond our pay grade. The story doesn't answer that big question of suffering. Instead, it turns it around and leaves us with a much more personal one. When the whirlwind comes for us, how are we going to respond?